These focus studies are all about taking maths that you've used and learnt like explicitly and then putting them in a context, right? So that's why I quite consciously didn't say, okay, well, I'm not going to teach you this as an idea. You've met this idea before. For example, I'm about to look at question 11. This is about percentage increase, right? Do you see in here the question I'm talking about, these percent this, percent that, and it's also about data and statistics and interpreting a graph, okay? So these are skills you've used before, but never quite in this exact arrangement. So you want to be able to explain from this context how to use these skills. Just have a look at this particular question for me. It says, using the graph of household electricity prices in Australia compared to other major economies. So here's us. Here are all these other economies. And the particular question I want to focus on is this one here. Complete the following statements. For reasons that will become clear in a minute. We're just going to skip to the second one. The price in Australia is what percent higher than in the EU countries? Okay, that's what it's asking. So here's Australia. Firstly, Australia's graph is unique. It's got two pieces unlike the rest. What are those two pieces in the Australian graph about?
The actual amount in the
2013.
Yeah, so this is like historical information. This is what we've already recorded. And then this is how much they expect based on things like population growth or what was the climate like this year, those kinds of things. Okay. So when it says the price in Australia, am I looking at the orange or the blue?
Orange.
I'm going to compare
Red.
orange/red here to other orange/reds. I don't have any other blues to compare to. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's the first thing. So I know that sounds little, but this is about how you read a graph and how you look at the information that's been presented to you. And you're not going to get the same graph every single time. Graphs are going to be designed differently depending on what their purpose is. Okay, so we're looking there. We're comparing to the EU countries, which is the third bar along. Okay, so first thing I'm going to write down is Australia's, what is the vertical axis? Have a look.
Cents per kilowatt hour.
Okay, so what's that a measure of? Cents per kilowatt hour. What does that mean? When you see, oh, our graph is higher than other people's, what does that mean about our country?
It costs, we're spending more.
Where, now,
We're using more, therefore it costs more.
this is household electricity prices, right? Now, I will not get into the economics of this because it will open a very big can of worms. But what this is how much we are charging households. It doesn't mean how much it actually costs to produce. It's how much people in actual, families and people living are actually paying, right? For all we know, electricity could actually cost the same amount in all these countries to produce. If that were the case, if electricity costs the same amount everywhere, what might account for one country being higher than another? Think about it. Do you remember, way back we were talking about peak and off-peak, it wasn't that long ago, we were talking about peak and off-peak electricity. Do you remember that? Why do they say at some times in the day electricity is more expensive and at other times it's not? Do you remember? What was the reason?
Use it at once.
Lots of people use it at once, but so what? Lots of people use the road at the same time, and we don't say, oh, you pay different tax rates depending on what time of the road you drive on. Why do we charge differently?
Because it can overpower the systems.
So the big idea was to avoid overpowering the traffic system or the electricity system. What we do is we discourage behaviors by charging it more. That could be what this is about. This is what it's measuring. What is Australia's? How do you read it? Let me help you out. I'll zoom in a little bit.
24.
What do you reckon?
25.
Probably 25.
I think it's reasonable to read it, I think, as 25. Because where would 26 be?
In the middle.
26 would be halfway, and we're clearly not there. So I think, and we're not expecting, looking at the units, for you to get like decimal points or anything like that. So let's say 25. Yeah? We're comparing that to the EU.
20.
That's bang on, so that's easy to read. So now we've got the numbers, come back to the question and make sure you know what it's asking. It says, the price in Australia is what percent higher than the EU countries? Just think about that really carefully. The price in Australia is higher than the EU countries. Now, I know you're like, well, obviously it is, right? Like, you just look at the numbers. But I'm going to change the phrasing of the question. I'm not going to write it down because it's taking me forever. But I want you to listen to this carefully because it's the same question, but it will have a different answer. Suppose if I said, instead of the price in Australia is some percent higher than in the EU countries, suppose I rephrase the question and said, the price in the EU is some percent lower than in Australia. Let me say that again. Same numbers, right? The price in the EU is some percent lower than in Australia. Now, it's dealing with the same reality, but the answers to those two questions are different. So my questions are, number one, what are those answers? Number two, how do you know which one you're supposed to do? Let me show you the answer, and then you can tell me how I'm doing this. First, I need to know the difference, right? Because it's about one higher than the other. What is the difference?
5 cents.
It's 5 cents. Oh,
Per
just take
kilowatt
that.
hour.
Thank you. That's the difference. Now, what will I do with this number? Because I don't want the difference in kilowatt hours, or cents per kilowatt hour rather. I want the difference as a percentage. So I need to compare this with one of these numbers. Which one?
Are we doing the actual question or the
We're doing the
rephrase
actual
one?
question.
It says what percent, like in Australia. I don't know.
This is why we're answering this question, which is why I'm glad I'm raising it. The price in Australia is some percent higher than. So you are comparing with the EU, right? Like the EU is your baseline. Imagine you were in the EU and then you moved to Australia, right? So the EU is where you started,
Flashback.
here, right? So what is 5 cents as a percentage of the EU? The answer is 25%. Okay? It's a quarter of 20 cents. Okay? Now, I gave you an alternative question. I said the price in the EU is some percent lower than in Australia. Okay? Well, that way I'm thinking about starting from Australia and transferring over. That's how I'm making the comparison now. So then I would say 5% as a percentage of
25.
25. That question would have the answer of 20%. Okay? So it's a little bit like, it's actually quite parallel to the question, okay, if I saw a car and it cost $50,000, right? And then it was discounted to say, what's a number that will work for me? $35,000. What percentage off is it? What is the percentage of the discount? Okay, you need to know two pieces of information. Number one, you need to know the discount. What is the discount from one to the other? The actual in dollar numbers. In dollar numbers, it's just $15,000, right? So the discount is $15,000, right? So I have to compare this to the original price, right? So if I compare it to here, that's 30%. So do you see how if I say 30% off, right? You calculate this 30% based on the original number, not on this afterwards number. And that's exactly what's happening here, right? So the original number is the EU, and then you go higher than that to Australia. Does that make sense? So that's why this question is 25%, not 20%. You have to read the question super carefully. And this kind of thing, it literally happens all the time.